Hello and welcome to the jungle garden in Denmark. At last we got some decent temperatures so that we could get started with a big project in what we call the new jungle bed. We had to dig all the plants up so we could raise the bed a little and put all the plants back in. And we have made it now. This is the new jungle bed, and finally we can get started on the big project with raising the bed. We have already started digging up the plants. We are doing it in sections so that we can put them back in the ground quickly if they're going back in the same spots, because not all of them are. The advantage of living on a farm is that we have always access to rocks. They keep coming up through the ground. We found some good big ones in the hedge alongside the paddock that we can use in the new jungle bed. Det er det rigtige sted. Another advantage with living on a farm is that we have some big machines we can use for this. Finally, we are finished with the new jungle bed and all the plants have been planted again. So now I'll take you on a little tour so you can see what we've been doing. First, when you walk into the garden, we have put some of the bamboos to the right so that in time I hope we'll get a bit of a plant corridor to go through from the beginning. And then you reach the damp corner. We've got the tree fern here and a lot of other ferns, and the climate in this part of the garden is a bit cooler and more damp than the rest. The moment you step down here you can sort of feel it, and I think that tree fern is going to like it a lot. It has already put out a lot of new fronds, as you can see. We have raised the bed a little here. Unfortunately, we haven't got the bamboo for the hedge yet. They're on the way, but they haven't arrived just yet. So next time, next vlog, I'll show you what it is going to look like when it's finished. We're very satisfied with how this corner of the garden turned out. It's like a little valley with a little pond. We've got that miniature pond where there actually lives a frog. Got the hostas and the grasses. It's really nice down here. And again, a bit further down, again we've planted a few bamboo to the right of the path to get that plant corridor. We have moved around with the plants so they're not exactly where they were before. We think it's better this way. Finally, I managed to get the real Gunnera manicata. And when you see them next to each other, then you can clearly see the difference. The one to the right is Gunnera manicata and the one to the left is Gunnera tinctoria. Twice I have bought from a nursery online a plant that they call Gunnera manicata, and it turned out to be tinctoria. And you can see the difference is quite clear. The manicata has these big plate-shaped leaves with white veins, and as you can see in here, the flower is very open and it's green, and the stems for the leaves are green as well. In comparison, when you look at the tinctoria, you can see the leaves are more funnel shaped, and they've got pink veins. Let's see if I can get a bit closer here. And when you look at the stems, they're red, and so is the flower. So it's very clear that I've got the wrong ones. The other one I bought looks exactly the same. So they just have to be destroyed. They are forbidden in both England and in France. Not in Denmark yet, but if you look at the government's homepage, it says, fortunately, it hasn't been found in Denmark yet, except for in my garden. Well, that'll be for only a short while longer. And here is Gunnera manicata. I finally managed to get hold of one. I know it'll get really big, so I hope I've given it enough room. And here, where it is a bit more sunny, we've made an eucalyptus grove. There are 3 different eucalyptus trees here, and they're all hardy, or supposed to be hardy enough for a Danish winter. There's one here, and then there's another one over there with more bluish leaves, and then a third one in the back. And I really like that Japanese forest grass, so I thought it could be funny to have a meadow of that. And I had 5 plants in other places in the garden, and they were sort of covered with leaves, so you couldn't even see them. So I've divided them, and I've gotten all these plants out of them. So instead of having those ugly fences that we tried to make to give some shelter for the garden, we have put in some bamboo. We already had them. They were scattered around in the bed, but now we've sort of made a little fence out of them. And here are some more of the palm trees we've moved to here, and you can see the bananas are on the way as well. And this year I've tried to do the same thing to the catalpa as I do with the paulownia, and it is working. It is getting some really big leaves, as you can see here. And then we have raised the bed even more, the back of the bed even more, as you might be able to see in the background, so that when you get down here you sort of get to this cliff face, if you can call it that. And this is a part of the garden that gets a lot of sun, as you can see now. So this will be plants that are sort of made for that. I've already spent all my plant money for this year, so they will be planted next year. And then the mountain sort of drops again, so we're coming down to normal level where the rest of the jungle plants. But all in all, we think it has turned out really good, and we're looking forward to get that bamboo hedge in the ground so we can get it finished. A rare guest in the bird restaurant, a jay, and the bird in the background is one of Denmark's smallest birds, a wren. It is impressive. how such a small bird can have such a powerful voice. Even though they're not part of the jungle, it's always pretty here in spring when all the rhododendrons are flowering at once. All different colors. Here in the New Zealand bed we have made some changes. We had quite a few of these bushes, hebe, and they were just so dominating, so we've dug up 2 of them and we have given them away to friends. And instead we have planted a lot of ferns around the new tree fern, because that is really how New Zealand is. Ferns and ferns and ferns. I just couldn't get hold of any New Zealand ferns, so we had to settle for Danish ferns. Well, anyway, it is important to get that trunk of the tree fern in shadow, because it is a little exposed in here in the New Zealand bed, because it gets a bit more sun than it's supposed to get. Hopefully the eucalyptus in the in the Australian bed will grow up and give some shade, but it'll take a few years just yet. Also in the Australian bed there are some changes. As you remember, the bottle brushes died again, so we've got a new one, the one to the right, called Hot Pink, and it's got pink flowers. And then we've got a Banksia to the left, and they're not hardy apparently. So this winter I'll dig them up and let them overwinter indoors. This is my Hydropod. This is the way I make cuttings into plants. And in it at the moment I've got some tetrapanax, some pachysandra, and a few hostas. And then I've just put them in, and then we'll have a look in 2 weeks' time to see how the roots are doing, or if they have developed roots. The way it works is that you fill the container with water, and then there's a little sprinkler that keeps the roots of the plants moist, or rather what is becoming roots, so that it doesn't rot, but it still has access to humidity. The way it works is that you put the plant in this little basket. There is I don't know what you call it, sort of thing that keeps the plant stable in the basket, and then the bottom of the plant is hanging into the basket, and then you take the plant and put it into the hole here, and now the bottom of the plant is kept moist but not wet, and most of the time they develop new roots. It's now been 2 weeks since I put the cuttings in the Hydropod, and let's have a look and see how it's going with the roots. First we have a look at one of the hostas. As you can see, it's looking really good. It's ready to be potted up. And if you look at the tetrapanax, it's also looking good and ready to be potted up. The pachysandras take a little bit longer. They are beginning to get roots, but they're so small that you can't see it on the video. So I'll give them a week more. So this little machine has turned out to be really, really good to in getting your cuttings to actually survive. We are cutting the grass to make hay, and the red kite loves that. They love it, both of them. There's a couple breeding not far from here, and they always show up when we cut the grass. This is our comfrey bed, where we have a lot of comfrey plants that we use to make our own fertilizer. Comfrey contains a lot of potassium, which plants and flowers likes, and it helps them to flower. So you cut up the leaves and the stems and the flowers and everything, and put it in a container with water and leave it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then you use it and you thin it up with water. 1 to 10 is what we normally do, and it enhances the flowering of the flowering plants. We also make our own fertilizer for plants with leaves, like the palm trees, and that we make out of stinging nettles. You do the same, you cut the whole thing up, put it in a container with water for 2 and 3 weeks, and then you dilute it 1 to 10 when you use it, and that enhances the growth of the leaves. And a very nice side effect is that the bees love the comfrey plants, as you can see. Next to the kitchen garden we have a bee bed with lots of plants that attracts insects, both butterflies and bees and ladybirds. And we also have one on the other side of the kitchen garden that's made out of perennials, but they're not in flower yet. And this is the containers we use to make the fertilizer in. We have a filter mat in the bottom of the container, so you don't get all the rotten plant stuff near the tap, and it's so easy to tap off, and you can't smell it then because it really stinks. The comfrey contains a lot of potassium, as I said before, and the nettle contains a lot of nitrogen. And here in the background we have our rainwater catchment tanks. We have in total 9 tanks that all contains, or each contains 1,000 litre, and we get the water from the roof of the indoor riding arena that you see in the background. It's good for the environment and also for your wallet, because it does save a lot. We use a lot of water for this garden and for the pond. And that was all for this time. Thanks for watching.